Welcome to Imperfect Mommying. Our children are constantly looking to us for examples. The term role model doesn't quite cut it here. We are shaping their worldview with every move we make. You see, it's not in the lectures we give or moments where we are actively attempting to teach them. It's in the micro movements we make, the unconscious ways in which we navigate life. We are constantly teaching our children how to show up for themselves, their friends, their future partners, and even their future children. So what can we do to ensure we are raising thoughtful, compassionate, self-aware human beings? We have to become them ourselves. No one is perfect, but we can still all be better, and it starts with self-healing. Let's get to it. Welcome back to Imperfect Mommying. I almost forgot the name of my podcast. So there's a demonstration of my imperfection. Today we have a very special guest all the way from, I think, England. Sometimes I get Australia.
Australia.
There we go. I get those two accents really confused. So we have
totally fine.
a super awesome Australian guest today, and her name is Erin O'Donoghue. Is that how you say it?
Yeah.
Perfect. Welcome, Erin.
Thank you. So awesome to be here.
Absolutely. So tell us a little bit about you.
Yeah, so I am a mum to currently 8.5-month-old baby girl, Isabella, and I am also a 2-time business owner. So I have 2 businesses, obviously, one in the coaching space where I help people connect to their purpose and design a life that lights them up, whatever that looks like for them. So obviously I live the entrepreneur life. I love that. I love living a life built around freedom, flexibility, and family. But I also know that that's not for everybody. So I love working with people to help them connect into what that looks like for them, what that life that lights them up looks like for them. And my other business is a co-working space. So we have a lot of small businesses that come together to work under our roof here. It's been a very tough 12 months in the context of COVID, being a business based on bringing people together face to face. But I really love that idea of bringing people together. And so we're very much in a rebuilding phase, along with also having my daughter in October last year as well. It has been a very, very busy 2 years, I guess, since the business opened. So that's a little bit about me. Outside of that, there's not a lot of time outside of that right now. And I suppose that's one of the things about being a mum, is finding that time for you. And I haven't probably managed to do that as well as I would like yet. But outside of that, I love going out with my friends. I love great food. I live in Melbourne in Australia, and we're really well known for our great food, great coffee. So that's something that I really do love doing. Also outside of COVID, having that also have been changed. That's what I normally like to do.
And I can imagine that having a baby inside of COVID was rather difficult.
It was a very unique experience. There were certainly upsides to it, in that, I got to wear stretchy clothes and I got to nap pretty much whenever I wanted to. So those were the positives, but it was challenging. It was certainly, my mum never saw me pregnant.
Oh.
In that whole entire time, and that I think was difficult for her. And as far as supports and support networks and those sorts of things, that was really, really lacking. Particularly post when we had her. We started coming out of lockdown after we had her, but it had such a huge impact on everything. So yeah, it was tricky.
Yeah. And I mean, for me specifically, like, one of my triggers in the newborn stage was being isolated, because in my circle of family, there were certain family members that were really uncomfortable with breastfeeding in front of male family members, and with or without the little headdress thing where you can peek down at them. I loved that thing. I know it's sometimes a little controversial, but I thought that was a perfect solution to people who don't want to see, but I don't want to leave. And it was, there was a lot of adjustment, and the me who I used to be back then was the social butterfly because I was afraid to be alone.
Yeah.
And so over the last, 4 or 5 years, I've been coming out of that, where now I actually crave the alone time.
Yes.
And so when COVID hit, everybody was checking on me, like, are you okay? Like, are you surviving? Really, are you okay? And I remember I told my son at the very beginning, like, I'm a little nervous that we're in basically lockdown, and because moms need breaks from their kids and kids need breaks from their moms. And and then I was pleasantly surprised to learn I didn't need it.
Yeah.
That we both had grace for one another. And I reminded him, hey, like, I'm feeling XYZ. And he would tell me, hey, mom, I need a break from you. Like, that's just the relationship that he and I have. And so it wasn't as hard as I thought it would be. And so that was one of the reasons, that's one of the many reasons I'm glad that I've done the work that I've done when I did it, to deal with these kinds of situations. But yeah, I remember that time being isolated, feeling like nobody wants me around because I'm feeding my child. Like, it just didn't make sense to me.
Yeah, it's quite a confronting thing. One of the surprises of motherhood for me was that I had a really difficult journey with breastfeeding. So I didn't have that same experience. I was dealing with a whole different thing around not being able to breastfeed. And it wasn't something that I ever considered would happen for me. I was always of the view of fed is best and, whatever the child needs. But then I think when it happened to me, I was so confronted by it because I just hadn't even considered that it was a possibility that it wouldn't happen for me, because my mum had done it easily, my sister had done it. So I had a different experience in that context. But I think, breastfeeding is still such a divisive topic, isn't it? And it's such a shame that you had that experience, because it is such a natural, beautiful, wonderful thing. And I think that's the thing about any kind of change that anyone in our circle goes through. It's funny the things that it brings up for other people. And so you're not just dealing with the changes in yourself, which as a new mum are huge, but then you're also trying to navigate the other people around you. So in some ways, when we were first in lockdown, when she first arrived, I was a little bit relieved to have that time of just the three of us. We couldn't have any visitors to the hospital. I was really fortunate that I had a private room in the public system. I was just very lucky, because I ended up having a C-section, that my partner was able to stay. So we had this really beautiful little bubble for the first little while.
Yeah.
But then beyond that, I think we started to come out of lockdown and we had an easing of restrictions, but there was still some in place. But people were nervous. People were nervous in lots of different ways. I think everyone went through their own stuff with COVID, whether they lost their job, whether their job amplified and they had to take on so much more, whether they were feeling nervous about COVID itself or had a bit of social anxiety. I think it has brought up a whole heap of stuff for people. And so I don't always find it easy to ask for help anyway. And we don't have a really strong family network. My partner's family is overseas. For me, it's my mum. She's been really great. And I also have like a sister who has two small kids of her own, and my brother was just coming back from overseas. So we didn't have a lot of that core support. And if there's one thing, if I had my time over again, it would be just to try and put supports in place around that, whether it be actually just getting organised to call on friends. But I didn't feel like I could, because I just kind of looked at everybody and everybody had so much stuff going on. And I think if you have had kids and they've grown up, you kind of forget what that newborn stage is like. If you have little kids of your own, you're dealing with that yourself. And then if you don't have kids, just like I didn't before I had a kid, you don't really get it. So it's really tricky. It is really, I think there's a massive space for better postpartum care for mums, and the system here in Australia there's a lot of checks for baby, which is great, but I think there's such a space for better postpartum care and support and more focus on what it looks like for you when you bring the baby home, because there's a lot of focus on the birth and all of that stuff, which is so important, but I just think there's a huge space for it.
Because you don't know what you don't know beforehand, right? And so if we spent more time, preparing, as much time preparing for the birth, or as we prepare for the birth, as much time preparing for postpartum, I think that having wellness checks for mom as well as baby, and I don't just mean the physical, because here in the States it's like, okay, we're going to check you 3 days postpartum, and then we're going to check you in 6 weeks to make sure that you're allowed, to see if you've healed enough to have sex, and then that's it.
Bye.
Because we need to have the first things first, right? Like the most important thing, we got to make sure that we're allowed to have sex again. And I'm saying that in a kind of a funny way. I'm in a lot of mom groups, and there's a lot of moms that are like, so I really, really want to have sex, and it's been 4 weeks postpartum. And I'm just like, no, wait, it's like your body has gone through something crazy. And I'm such a rule follower that I was terrified. My husband at the time was overseas, and he came back like 6 weeks, like after my son. So exactly 6 weeks postpartum. So there was no temptation, obviously. But when he came back, I was terrified that she wasn't going to clear me to go. Cause I'm like, it's been months. It's happening. So you need to clear me.
I just need you to sign here.
Yeah, this is like, just sign it. It's whatever. And, and I never even questioned why there was this 6-week rule until probably like my third postpartum, like, because I've been a surrogate 3 times, and I have one of my own. So I've had 4 babies, but
amazing.
So
did not know that. That is a beautiful gift.
Thank you. And part of my story is like around 6 months going to the doctor's office for his 6-month checkup. I'm pointing like everybody can see he's over there. But that he had a 6-month checkup, and they had a questionnaire like, how's mom? And one of the questions was, are you getting the support that you need? And in my head, I was like, no, I'm not. And I checked yes, because I was like you, where I didn't know how to ask for what I needed. And I didn't know what I needed. I just knew I wasn't getting the support that I wanted. Like, things weren't matching up with my vision of what I wanted my life to be like with the family. Right. And so, I think that's a big struggle for women. And it's interesting to me that it is worldwide and not just in the United States.
And I think, there's something about the expectations we have that you just touched on, expectations of what we think it's going to be like. And I had prepared myself for the fact that it was going to be difficult, that I was going to be sleep deprived. I was potentially going to be, feeding 3 hourly. I'd prepared for those sorts of things. I had a really good baby, bless her. She's still a really good baby. And so all of the things I'd braced for, potentially a baby crying all the time, I didn't have to deal with. What I wasn't prepared for was everything else around that changing. My view of the world changing, the understanding of what my body had been through and how the hormones were still raging. Yes, the sleep deprivation, but the adrenaline that just gets you through, and the drive that you have to protect this little person. Well, that was my experience, to protect this little person at all costs, the changes to your relationship, because it's now no longer the 2 of you. And I think especially because we'd been in lockdown for the 7-8 months beforehand, we had been each other's complete and utter world, and that had its beauty and its challenges.
Right.
And now we had this little person, and like everyone says it changes your relationship, but I think there's no preparing for how it changes your relationship, because bringing a baby into the world also brings up so much personal stuff for each of you. You know, if there's any childhood wounds that are there, if there's any wounds from how you were parented, those sorts of things all come up. And yeah, it's very difficult to know what, that just resonates so much for me, what you said. What sort of support do I need? I'm not sure. I don't know who it is that don't even know who it is that I'm asking for this support, let alone who would be the person that would help me, you know, because I think if we're talking mental health, and again, I can only talk from my experience here in Australia, there is a system in place. It's getting better. There's much less stigma around asking for help, but it's still very much geared towards crisis point. So does this person look like she's coping? You know, and I had the maternal child health nurse saying, you're doing an amazing job. Yes, you're doing an amazing job, the GP. Oh, you're doing a really great job. She's good because you're good. Okay, cool. So you get that kind of reassurance. And then I'd walk away and I'm like, but hang on, I'm not sure I am really good.
Yeah.
And you know, again, I wasn't at crisis point. We never got to crisis point, fortunately, but there is this gap, I think, in general care of just understanding the enormity of what a new family unit goes through when welcoming a baby into it.
Yeah, I just, everything that you just said. And because I think that we take for granted, because the world's been around for however many millions or billions of years it's been around, and we've been birthing children since the dawn of time, that we know what to do. But when you really think about it, we used to be in villages. Like there's the African proverb of it takes a village to raise a baby, and we don't have villages anymore. And we are getting, especially during COVID, but we're getting more and more isolated as moms. And and like there's so many things that need to happen postpartum, or even while you're pregnant. Like relationship counseling would be amazing preparation for explanation of, like, here's some signs for what normal air quote hormonal imbalance feels like, and what abnormal hormonal imbalance feels like, and education for doctors too. I've heard so many stories of moms who are like, I was just XYZ. I was this, that, and the other thing. I was going like, and I felt like I was going crazy. And my doctor's like, that's totally normal. And it turned out that it wasn't. And so, you know, I have a family member that struggled with postpartum OCD, and a customer of mine in my other business is a therapist, and now works with women who are suffering postpartum. And she's so busy. There's only 2 people in our town that do what she does, and they are booked solid.
Yeah.
And I'm like, give them my number.
I'll help. But this is the thing. Like, I love those questionnaires, because I mean, firstly, when I did my questionnaire at 6 weeks or whatever checkup it was with the maternal child health nurse, she was sitting with her back to me. She wasn't even looking at me. She was so busy just ticking off the checklist. So firstly, and again, that's not a slight on her, you know, she's overworked probably and just going through this. But firstly, are the people asking these questions actually equipped to ask them? And do they have the capacity to be able to do this as part of their broader work? Because I could imagine that things just keep getting piled on top, on top, on top. But the other thing is they ask questions like, do you feel more overwhelmed than usual? Or do you feel something for no good reason? And it's like, well, yeah, there's a good reason. I've just given birth and I've got a child. So how do I actually answer that question?
Right.
You know, like, well, yeah, I can justify there's a good reason because I've been through this massive thing. But actually, what is the question that you're asking here? So, you know, for someone like me that overlays a very logical kind of piece to it, I can be so illogical, but I can be really logical at points. It says, well, oh no, it's probably normal that I'm feeling this way because I've been through this. There is a good reason for it. So I'm going to answer that question in a certain way. So I think there is, again, so much space for very specialized people working in this area.
Which is why I love that there's coaches, because I really feel like coaches bridge the gap
Yeah.
if you're looking for something that the doctor's not giving you, and
Yeah,
or that the
because
doctor's not seeing, because we've gone through it. The
yeah.
things that we teach, like I would imagine you said you help people with their purpose. I would imagine that that's something you struggled with,
Yeah, absolutely.
right?
And I think
Yeah.
it's so interesting. I was just going to say when I said that about, those specialized people, I paused, but there is something about them having a lived experience, which is exactly what you're saying. So yes, we end up coaching in a space that's usually coaching a previous version of ourselves.
Mhm.
And there is something about a lived experience that says, I find it easier to empathize with you. Your experience is not exactly the same as mine, but I can see you in me. And there is something so powerful about that. And, it's not just a medical situation, is it?
Mm.
I've coached before I became a mum. I coached people who were mums returning to work, and they said it was useful and helpful and they got a lot out of it. So that's awesome. But I'm sure now I add an extra level because I
Right.
get it. I
Yeah.
get it when I talk about things like, making time for yourself. I get how hard that is, but how important it is because I've lived it. When we talk about things like creating schedules, not just creating space for the activities that need to be done, but also emotional space. Those sorts of things that I now really get because I live it. So I think that's such a good point.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And um I mean, I don't know that I have anything more to add. I feel like that's complete. Like that there's a need, and coaches are filling the need. And so I think that what also needs to happen is that society needs to broaden their idea of what an expert is. And
Yeah.
and I think that an expert is someone who's gone through it and come out the other side a little bit better, right?
Yeah.
you know
Yeah.
and can then turn around and say, hey, I've been through this, let me tell you what worked for me and let me guide you. And I, like, to me, that's what a coach is. And that's why I love these kinds of conversations, because it always kind of brings out, what and highlights what it is that we do, and why, life coaching is important, why personal development is important,
Yeah.
and how it can, make you a better parent.
Absolutely. And I think, the more work that I do working with people, the more work I do on myself. When it comes to business, your strategy is so, so important. Absolutely. It's always going to be, who are my customers? Who am I serving? What is it that I'm here to do? How am I going to get my message out there? So important. But if you don't have the mindset piece right, and for me in my own practice, my spirituality, I haven't always been an incredibly spiritual person. I've come back to it more closely. And the more I get in touch with my mindset and addressing the limiting beliefs that I have by making sure I'm constantly, looking at my boundaries and where that's sitting at, and also how I trust my intuition.
Yeah.
It's the mindset and the spirituality, or the connection to yourself, that is the powerful piece. And sometimes that is so hard to do on your own,
Yeah.
because we don't know what we don't know. We can't necessarily see our blind spots. And I think that's another really powerful way that our coaches can really help. You can do a lot of work on your own, yes, but if you want to accelerate it, if you want to have somebody hold up a mirror to you, then working with a coach that really resonates with you. And that's what I always say to people. There are a lot of coaches out in the market now. The most important thing that you do is to find someone that resonates with you. And that's why social media is so wonderful. You can be watching, you can be observing, and you can really just connect with someone in a way that helps you get the feel for how this person works with you. So, yes. And isn't it wonderful that we live in the world that we live in, where you can work with someone on the other side of the world, and you can find this person that you seemingly have nothing in common with because of where you live or how you've grown up. but you can have this amazing connection with them and work with them from the other side of the world. It's amazing.
Yeah, I love that we're not limited. Like I think I said in my second podcast that like a lot of people think that the 80s is the best time frame because like we got to, you know, run down the street and we'd play and like latchkey kids and all this stuff. And I'm like, I don't know, because I really love the technology that we live in. And yeah, kids are, you know, using a lot of it and they're growing up on tablets and we don't totally know the ramifications of all that.
Yeah.
But like I thrive on technology. I'm always looking for new apps that help me be more focused, be more productive. You know, I started reusing my habit tracker, so it reminds me to like drink my shake and take my vitamins and little things like that that just help you improve your life.
Yeah.
Like we wouldn't have those things if it wasn't for the technology. So I don't know that there's any one generation that's better, but there's like perks of different generations.
100%.
Yeah,
100%. And even when
I
you said
just love.
before, you know, it takes a village to raise a child, and we don't necessarily have that anymore. I definitely think that's a missing part. And also, you know, the world has changed in that, you know, like for me, having a baby now compared to more traditional times in the past, either going back into traditional employment or even not working at all. Thank goodness, my gosh, I don't live in a time where it was expected that I would stay at home, because that was never going to be for me either. But there's, you know, there's pros and cons, like you said, to everything. And I think the best thing about the time that we're in now is that we get to choose. You know, we have so much choice at our fingertips, and that can be overwhelming, don't get me wrong, but we have so much control over the path that we're going down, which is kind of ironic in the context of COVID, where we've been locked in our house.
I know, right?
And we had so much freedom taken away from us, but that's a different thing. And that's an interesting, I guess, dichotomy in that space. But I think we have so much choice. We have so much choice about connecting to who we are as humans, what it is we feel we're here to do in the world, and actually getting to pursue that in a way that has not been available in the past. And that's amazing.
One blog post that I had the idea of writing early on when we first were shut down was about the fact that nothing really changed as far as the amount of control that we have. It was just the illusion that we actually had control over our lives was taken away.
Yeah.
And I never got around to writing it, just mostly because I genuinely thought that the world was going to open up 6 weeks later. I'm not joking. I did not think that this was going to last a year and a half.
Yeah.
Call me naive, call me stupid.
None of us did. I think, thank goodness we didn't know that, because it's kept us optimistic and kept going, right? But yeah, I think that is so true. And that is one of the biggest things about becoming a parent is this very in your face realization, for me anyway, about how little control I have over everything. And oh my gosh, it's so freeing to let go of that. It is so freeing. And I'm a recovering controlaholic, I suppose, if that's even a thing. But, you know, we have been so programmed to think that we have control over everything that we, and yes, we have choice. Absolutely. Yes, we have free action and all of that sort of stuff. But there is so much that happens outside of that is way beyond our control, and particularly when you've got a little person
blowing kissy faces in the middle of the podcast, you know,
being way too cute and being like, Mum, we need to go, I need to go live my best summer life here. It is, I love that anyway. I think there's definitely still a space for you to write that blog post. It is spot on.
That's true. I forgot about it. It wasn't a conscious choice to not write it. But I mean, and especially in the context that we're talking, like we really don't have control as parents. We do have choice. And I love that you said that. Like we don't have control, but we have choice. We have choice over everything.
Yeah.
We can choose to be irritated by the dog barking.
Yeah.
Or we can choose to think it's cute. Like it's a choice. we don't think that it's a choice because usually one feeling or the other happens really quickly.
Yeah.
But it is a choice. And I can't tell if that's my son or the dog, because my son is really good at imitating the dog.
Look. And I really think too, it's letting go of this sense of perfection as
Yes.
well. Like
Mhm.
that's one of the reasons I'm so grateful to have my own business in line with having my daughter, because I get to write the rules about how this looks for me. Like sometimes I have to bring her into work with me. Now, in a traditional workplace, I wouldn't be able to do that.
Right.
I'd have to really seek permission, I guess. Now,
Yeah.
it doesn't work great for me because I don't get much work done while she's here, but if it happens, it happens. And if I'm doing an Instagram live and she's sitting there playing with her toys, that is absolutely okay too. Again, we get to make the rules, and
Right.
I love that so much. And no one cares that the dog's barking in the background, really. And if they do, they're probably not your people,
Right.
you know?
And
So
it's funny, this dog, we got him 2 days ago, and he showed up in our
so cute.
life. We weren't looking for him. He showed up.
He chose you.
He chose us. He really did. And um we what I've noticed, I've been the primary caregiver. However, my son's really stepped up, taking care of the dog in a way that he's never stepped up taking care of the cat. So I was really surprised about that.
Mm.
And the other thing that I found really interesting is that because he's in the puppy stage and I have to watch him like a hawk or he'll pee on the floor, when he's asleep, I'm like, okay, I'm going to do this and this and this and this. And I'm doing all of those things in a way more focused and efficient way,
Yeah.
because I know I only have probably 30 minutes. Luckily, he's
It's
been
just like
taking.
having a baby
It
again.
is. It's so much worse than a baby. I say that because I could leave Xander alone for 30 seconds without him peeing on the floor or
You need to get a nappy for
destroying
the dog, a
something.
diaper for the dog.
So anyway,
Yes, it
is
is. I think,
there, go ahead.
the only thing I would say on that is I think, for so long, I can remember when I was in my, traditional employment, when people would be like, oh, we don't know about employing this mum because she can only work part-time or this or that or whatever. And I was always just like, apart from the fact that's crazy thinking, all the mums that I know, so many of the mums I know, they are such hard workers. They are diligent. They come in, they know they have 8 hours, for example, or 7 hours, whatever, and they have to smash that out. There's no hanging around the water cooler having a chat. There's no long lunches. There's none of that, because they know they have got X amount of time away from their kids and that this is the time they have to get it done, and they are laser focused and they smash that work out.
There
And
is
I
no
think
overtime.
there is no overtime because, their day starts all over again when they get home. And there's just something so different about the way that I work now. I am, the time that I'm away from her, I do still have trouble juggling when I'm physically with her, and I'm still working on that. That feeling of, am I being fully present for her, is very front of mind for me. But the days when I'm away from her and away here at the co-working space, I'm so laser focused and I know how much I need to get done, and I'm so much more efficient in a way that I never have been before. So I think that's absolutely, mums powering through work is absolutely a very real thing.
Absolutely.
Mm.
Is there a piece of advice that you have for moms? I think that you're the first relatively new mom I've had as a guest. And I mean, we've had like most of my guests have been moms, but I'm 9 years removed from brand new baby.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure I don't have a clear memory of what that was like. So is there any piece of advice that you want to give moms in general or new moms?
Yeah. So I think, everybody says how fast the time goes. And, you looking back 8, 9 years would be just like an absolute blur, like you said, and so much happens. But, it just strikes me how quickly they go from newborn to now my 8.5-month-old, and how much they grow and change and learn in that time. So one thing that I've kept reminding myself through this is, the times where she just wants to sleep on me and just wants to snuggle with me, how fast that time grows. And now she's getting too big that soon she won't be able to do that too easily. And so I guess just doing the best you can to stay in the moment when the moments are happening, knowing that, yes, there is a life outside, and, I'm so driven to do what I do because I want to create an amazing life for her, but it will all happen all in good time. So not racing and rushing those moments and really trying to be present. The other piece of advice I would say is that it's amazing how quickly your needs just fall to the bottom of the list of, child, partner, business, dogs, mum goes right down the bottom. And as I think I said before, I haven't nailed this yet. And I suppose that's the other thing about motherhood. You're never really going to nail it. You're constantly learning and growing, but really trying to figure out what the things are that fill up your cup, because we all know that to be the best mum, we need to be the best version of ourselves. And so really trying to carve out those little things, whether it's just going and getting your nails done or going for a walk on your own without a little one kind of hanging off you, and just creating a bit of time and space for yourself to really be conscious of what it is that you need to fill up your cup.
Yeah, self-care is a big thing that I'm a fan of. And and it's not about being perfect at taking care of yourself, because we're not raised as children to say, like, nobody ever tells us, hey, you need to make sure that you have some you time and you need to do things that fill your cup. Like, nobody says that.
No.
Until your cup starts getting empty and you're like, what's going on?
Yeah.
And so not knowing what fills your cup is just part of, we're not programmed to know that stuff. We're not taught to look at it. And I mean, I stopped writing for 12 years and writing is the thing that like fills my soul.
Yeah.
And I stopped doing it.
Yeah.
And I didn't know that my soul wasn't getting full.
Yeah. Yeah.
Until I started writing again. And it was like, oh, I remember this. This makes me so happy. And I started really thinking, okay, well, today I only have 30 minutes. That's a good amount of time.
Yes.
Like if I do 30 minutes every day, I'm cool. Like self-care is misunderstood by pampering.
Yes.
And some of us don't get our cups filled by being pampered.
No.
Like a massage makes my body feel good, but it lasts for about a day. And I can't get a massage every day.
No. That's what I feel like at the moment. I need a massage every day just to get my body back to
right.
Yes. But yeah, absolutely. And I think you're right. Taking those little moments, it's so easy to fall into the trap of I don't have time. But I guess that's the thing for any mum that this is resonating with, maybe try and stop and write a list of all the things that make you feel good. And even if you take a snippet of starting with once a week, to just do something that fills up your cup, to even be able to take the time to pause and, like you said, remember what it is that fills up your cup, and just start to try and do something small for yourself.
Yeah. And I think a good way of thinking about it is like, what did you enjoy doing before you were a mom?
Yep.
I remember thinking before my son was born that I would never get to cross stitch again, because I didn't think that my hands would ever be empty. And I didn't think that I'd ever have time to sit and cross stitch. And when I realized, okay, I want to write again, I was nervous, because the old way I used to write was I would get lost in the writing and I would stay up till 4 a.m. creating a story. And I was like, well, what if I get stuck? What if I get into this groove and I forget what time it is and I forget to pick up my son? Like, that was a legitimate fear.
Yeah.
That I said to a life coach. Like, I was legitimately afraid of forgetting to pick my son up. And she goes, can you put it in your calendar and set a reminder? And I'm like, yeah. I can.
I can do that. And that's the thing. It is an adjustment. Like I used to, and I'm not saying I wasn't busy before, but I used to have the freedom to come and go pretty much as I pleased. I could go and do get a massage or randomly go for a walk. You have to get much more planned. And I'm not a super planned or structured person. So it takes some adjustment for sure. But the other thing that you said before is, we weren't taught how to do this. I want to role model this for my daughter.
Yeah.
I want to show her that this is what you do. The most important thing is to be a kind, loving person, but also who knows how to put yourself first, because that is the most important. So, I think that's another thing that has been such a big eye-opener to me, is how much I want to be a better person so that I can role model that for her.
Yeah, absolutely. I changed so much when I became a mom, and my boyfriend's like, yeah, you're supposed to.
Yeah.
And I'm like, but nobody told me that. Like, I didn't know. I didn't know that I didn't know I was gonna change. Like, nobody talks about this stuff. And
Could I give him a bone now?
Sure, give him a bone.
He's like, come on, Mom, I need to go.
I got on the dog from 2 days.
I know. The dog is just using his arm as a chew toy, and we're trying really hard. Go ahead and give him a bone, bud.
Could we give him 100 toys so he won't chew
We
anything?
gave him a lot.
It's his way of showing that he loves you.
Yeah, I know. We show it in a less abusive way.
That's right.
So is there a book that you've read personal development or parenting that has been especially impactful for you?
So I have read 0 parenting books.
That's okay. I've read like 2.
Because I just find that, I try to lean into my intuition. If something comes up, I Google it or I talk to a girlfriend. But one book that kind of sticks out in my mind that I think is really relevant is a book called Make Time. It's not parenting related. It's written by a couple of ex-Silicon Valley guys who actually were involved, who worked at Google and were actually involved in creating Gmail. Jake Knapp is the first guy. I can never remember. John Zeratsky is the second guy. And it's all about how these wonderful technology tools have been so great in creating productivity, but they have also created this major distraction for us. So it is all about getting back more time through utilizing those technological tools and other strategies to actually make them work for you, as opposed to being a distraction. So things like removing notifications from your phone if they're constantly dragging you, not waking up to checking your phone as the first thing, and getting much more structured. I loved that book and I found it really helpful. And one of the reasons I found it really great was it's not a step-by-step guide of here, do this. It's like, here's all of the things that have worked for us. Now you pick and choose what works for you. And they both have different methodologies. And I just found that book so great. Actually, as we're talking about it, I think it's probably time for me to reread it in the context of my new life. But I found it really, really helpful. So I would highly recommend that book.
It sounds like it would translate to parenthoods really well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because one of my challenges in feeling present is, because I have these businesses that have calling on my attention, I have days where I don't work, but there are things still that need to be done. I'm constantly worried that I am drawing too much attention from her by being on my phone. And she's 8.5 months old and she knows how to swipe a phone. I mean, yay for Steve Jobs for creating something so intuitive that a baby can use it.
Right.
But you said before, we don't know the long-term implications of this. And so I'm worried about it. So yeah, absolutely 100% applicable to parenthood.
Yeah. I think that it is intuitive. My puppy swiped my iPad, like he just stepped on it and closed an app. Like,
yeah.
So
that makes me feel better.
No, the puppy totally did that. And the puppy's like 8 weeks old, so totally happens. So it's very intuitive. Yeah. And I don't think I don't think all technology is bad. There was a TV show called Super Why. I think that's what it's called. Super cute show. It was on Netflix a couple years back, and they would solve mysteries using reading or something, right? And so there would be missing letters, and that would show up in the show, and then you as the watcher are supposed to call out, oh, I see the letter, right? And then they would call out the letter at some point, and then you would store it and then those letters would spell a word. And I mean, we would drive, my son was nonverbal for a long time, 2 years. But he was pointing out the letters. We have a event center called the Save Mart Center. Yeah. And he was looking at the letters on the wall, and he was like, Mommy, S and A and V. Like, he was spelling really before he was talking.
Yeah.
So, and I, that show was kind of a babysitter for me, so I could get some work done, because I was in the same situation as you. So it's all about balance. Sure. If we have 14 hours of screen time, that's probably not great.
Yes.
But your 8-month-old is most likely imitating you also. And that's good. Like, that shows that she's paying attention to you and she wants to do what you do, right?
Yes, exactly. And it's like anything, the technology is just the technology. It's up to us as humans. Again, we have a choice as to how we use it. And I know there's tricks and techniques that make us want to use it, but ultimately, it is my choice to be on Instagram for X amount of hours, and I'm in control of that. So, you can't blame the tools forever.
Right. And then when it really becomes an issue for you, if you feel like you're spending more time on Instagram than you're spending with your daughter, you're going to delete the app, because you're a good mom. Like, you're going to recognize that that's a thing. Somebody might point it out to you, right? My boyfriend points out to me a lot of the things that I should be doing,
should is such a bad word.
I know, should, such a bad word. But he'll point out stuff, and I've always interpreted his pointing out things, because you could choose to think of it as criticism.
Yeah.
Or I chose to see it as ways that I could level up, because what do I want? Like, I want to be the best mom that I can be. And if he sees a hole in my game, I want to know about it. And then I can choose if he's right, or if I'm going to keep doing what I'm going to do, or if I'm going to make small adjustments, and I think that that's a healthier way of accepting feedback and criticism. That was one of my blogs, is are you looking at feedback as criticism?
Yes.
Yeah. And
that could be a whole other
That's a whole other episode, right?
Yeah, feedback is a gift. And it's how you accept it in the moment, I think, too. And that's one of the things. Again, early parenthood, wounded child, getting feedback. It's so easy to see that as criticism, but
Absolutely. Yeah. So I could talk to you forever, but I will.
I think we could.
I know, right?
You've got to get Xander off to his date.
Yeah. And get you back to your daughter. And so where can our listeners find you?
Yeah, so you can find me on Instagram. I hang out there a lot lately at This Is Hive Collective. I am also on Facebook, but Instagram's probably the best place. Please, I would love to know, say hello, send me a DM if you've heard the podcast. I'd love to have a chat. I'm always really keen to connect and speak with like-minded people and share the joys of parenthood, the joys of business life, and even, spirituality. Love talking about all those sorts of things.
Awesome. Perfect. So that'll be in the show notes. And so thank you for joining us today. I really appreciate you pouring into our listeners.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been awesome chatting with you.
Absolutely. So we will be back for another episode next week of Imperfect Mommying. And until then, or in the meantime, I want to encourage you to rate the podcast, comment, reach out to Erin, say hi, all those kind of fun things that make us feel loved and special and grow the podcast. And then in the meantime, until we see you again next week, happy healing. Bye. Thank you for tuning in to Imperfect Mommying. It's time for us to step up and realize that our power is not in trying to shape our children. Our power lies in shaping ourselves into the people we want our children to model themselves after. Don't just do it for your kids. Do it for yourself. When you become a more self-aware, compassionate, and confident person, you and everyone around you benefit. For more information about me and my work, visit AlysiaLyons.com. That's AlysiaLyons.com. See you next time.